Is there a juror that's sleeping, right? Are all the jurors awake and paying attention? Is there a juror that needs to go to the bathroom and is trying to get my attention, right?
What do you see that we as lawyers, as court-going audience, completely miss and don't even pay attention to?
Well, I think as a lawyer, you're paying attention to your client and the judge, right? And you may not, sometimes you're not even paying attention to the opposing party.
You just listen for the case name.
Because, you're waiting for your case and to come up. And in a criminal courtroom, there's just a lot of things that are going on. I mean, people are coming in and out. A lot of courtrooms at 26 and Cal are busy courtrooms. So you have probation officers, you have galleries full of people that sometimes may not get along because you have, defendants' family. I mean, for instance, something as serious as a murder case, right? You have defendant's family there supporting the defendant, and you have a victim's family. That's obviously they've lost a loved one, right? And they're across from each other in a courtroom. So sometimes things, erupt. There's things that go wrong. So I think my aspect of it from the bench is I kind of try and see everything. I don't, I try to pay attention to obviously not only the case in front of me, which I have to pay attention to, but also kind of keep an eye out what's going on in the courtroom. Or if I have a jury in the box, right, to keep an eye on, is there a juror that's sleeping, right? Are all the jurors awake and paying attention? Is there a juror that needs to go to the bathroom and is trying to get my attention, right? The same thing with, the defense table or the prosecutor's table. Like, is there an attorney that's trying to get my attention to go off the record? Or, is there something that the sheriff wants to, give me a note, or my clerk next to me, right? Or the court reporter. So there's so many moving parts that you see everything because you're the highest one above everything. So you see everything and you should pay attention to everything. You know what I mean? So I don't know if that kind of answers your question, but there's things that you just got to keep an eye out for, especially when there's a case where there's a lot of emotions, because things can erupt in a courtroom. People could start fighting, which they have in the courtroom. So these are things that you try to keep an eye out so that you could alert the sheriff. So, if something needs to be done, so that I try to minimize disruptions in the courtroom as much as possible. So that kind of, I don't know if that answers your question directly, but you do kind of have a view of everything that not everybody's in the courtroom is going to be looking at.
That is a great point, because as you mentioned, as an attorney waiting for my case to be called, I pay attention to my notes, my client, right, and just make sure I'm going to stand up when the case is called.
Your client's family in the gallery, you might not even be paying attention to, but I could see like they're trying to get your attention, right? So I could say, counsel, just so if you need to talk to the defendant's family, or, I kind of get to see that and then let you know, so that there's to try to minimize disruptions, but so that everybody kind of gets heard. I think that's my responsibility as a judge, that I'm paying attention to everything so that if need be, everybody gets heard or everybody's issue is getting addressed somehow, so that when they leave my courtroom, they're like, okay, she paid attention to me, or she addressed my issue, which is
they feel heard.
Yeah, and which is what my job is, right? So
my clients quite often ask me, counsel, what should I wear to court? What would you tell those people? How should they dress up for court?
Be respectful of a courtroom, right? I guess I'm not as much of a stickler, I guess, in how people dress in a courtroom. And, being involved in a criminal courtroom all these years, I've seen a lot of interesting attire.
What's the craziest one that you remember?
Well, things that come to mind are just T-shirts with probably provocative language on them, or inappropriate things on T-shirts, or you're facing a drug case and you got a marijuana leaf, or you're facing a drug case and you have something on your T-shirt that says, cocaine rules or something like that. I mean, it's sometimes the choice of attire is quite interesting, that you're probably not a good idea that you wear that to court, right?
Do you think people just don't pay attention, or they want to provoke you?
No, I don't think I don't know that I wouldn't say it's to provoke me or anybody, quite frankly. I think it's more of just the lack of insight, but more than anything, the lack of respect that you're going to a courtroom. And to me, that's one of the things that no matter who you are, and I try to instill that in my courtroom, that if somebody is lounging around or kissing and pretending like they're on a couch, in their bed, in their bedroom or house, that, I call them out on it. This is a courtroom, so I tell my deputies that that kind of behavior is not appropriate in a courtroom. So I try to, kind of do that in my courtroom to let people know that when you're coming into a courtroom, whether it's mine or any other courtroom, it's not just me as a judge, but I think a courtroom is a place that should be respected, right? So when you come to a place that should be respected, how you dress should be respectful. If you're a defendant on a case wearing, a nice pair of pants and a button-up shirt, probably not a bad idea, right? To give the right impression that you're respectful of the court, the courtroom.
I tell my clients to dress up as you would for an interview.
Right.
But at the same time, it's been so long since I interviewed. I don't even know what they were to interviews anymore.
Well, and I'm not saying, everybody has to wear a shirt and tie that comes in. I mean, that's just not practical to me. But appropriate attire, right? I mean, anything that shows that you're, understand and respect the courtroom and the courtroom process.
Is there anything that we attorneys do that drives you nuts? Is there?
That's a good question. Well, I think because I am very much a judge that likes to be efficient, going back to the efficiency aspect, I really think that being efficient in a courtroom is very important, because that allows everybody not only to be heard, but get the appropriate time and their issue addressed in an appropriate time and an appropriate manner, right? So when attorneys come in not prepared, I mean, that's probably I would call a pet peeve, right? And that goes back to, I would advise young lawyers that are just coming out of law school, or even law students in law school, right? Biggest way to get ahead, to me, in the area of law is be prepared. Know what you're going in for. Know what you're doing on that status date, right? What was the status date set for? Is it set for a trial? And then if you're not prepared for trial, why not? Right? I mean, I love when, Judge, I'm just not ready for trial. Okay, great. Thank you for telling me that. But how about, what is the reason you're not ready for trial?
Or
right?
I'm just stepping up for a friend. I know nothing.
Right. Well, and that's fine. Well, the counsel, but then you're giving me the reason why you're there, and that the counsel is ill or involved in another case and couldn't get away. So you're giving me some reason, right? That's all I ask for, is like a reason. Because when, for me to grant you a continuance, let's say, right, I would like to hear a reason why you're not ready, so that there's a reason I'm granting you a continuance. I don't think that's too much to ask for. And quite frankly, you don't want to keep continuing a case over and over again. And once again, that's inefficient. That, I don't know if your client even is agreeing to this or he's happy with it. And then, the opposing side, whether it's a civil or criminal case, maybe calling witnesses from out of state and is having them ready on a day of trial, right? Going through a bunch of things, and the opposing counsel come in and says, I'm just not ready. And the judge is like, oh, okay. I mean, that doesn't seem right? Doesn't seem fair or just or at all. So, I mean, it's an old, right? Eagle Scout, Girl Scout, whatever, be prepared. know what you're going into a courtroom for. Be prepared. As a law student, what do you got to do for this class the next day? Did the teacher tell you to read a case, right? And, how about just in any aspect of the law, because it's so, to me, you should read. There's so much reading, right? As a lawyer, there's a lot of reading and analyzing and thinking that, before you go into a courtroom, you should be prepared. I mean, not too much to ask for, but yet still, after all these years, still amazed how many times I will have attorneys just not prepared and not giving me a good excuse of why they're not prepared.
that was my follow-up question.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask if there's any common excuse that comes up.
Well, yeah, I mean, I could see, well, Judge, we're still continuing our investigation, Well, then I delve into that a little bit. Oh, really? Well, what are you looking for a particular witness? And then, how long have you been looking for this witness? Is this witness somebody that is going to be able to be found? I mean, so, it's almost like I'm, deer in the headlights look when I start asking more questions. So it's just easy, just know what you're doing and be prepared, right? And if you have a filing due, then file something. If you need more time to file something, well, then file something in the meantime, and then say, Judge, I do expect to supplement this filing. I just didn't have the time to, research this particular issue. So I'm filing something today because it was, I had a filing due. So you're showing the judge in the court that you're, mindful of that there was a filing expected. You show the judge that you're doing something about it. And just, there's a particular thing that you still didn't get to, that you still want to research. And you say, Judge, can I have another 30 days or whatever it is to supplement the filing I have today? I mean, it'll go a long way with a judge.